Today on More Organised, Less Clutter, I'm talking with Saskia from the Business Minimalist. She's a business minimalist mentor, systems strategist, and a verified consultant. She will be helping us today to declutter your actual digital workspace rather than just your physical space. Welcome, Saskia.
Hey, Narelle, thanks for having me.
Oh, no, thank you for making the time to come on. We'll start though with two accessories that you would come with as a Barbie doll, just so that people can get to know you a little bit.
Okay, yeah, this is an interesting one. It sounds easy, but it is not. I think one would have to be my trusty little coffee thermos that I always have with me, which explains itself, I think. And the second would have to be a little peach scooter because I live in Bali and I'm always scooting around on my scooter.
Oh, that's cool. And does everybody in the family, do you have a car as well?
No,
Or you
no,
just put everyone on the
we're
scooter?
all scooter. We've got two,
Yeah.
we've each got our own scooter, and my husband's is a little bit more, it's a larger scooter, so
Okay.
we fit on that one together.
Yeah, yeah. So if I was to come over to Bali, Indonesia, to work with you as a professional organizer in the physical space, what area in your home do you think you need some assistance with? Maybe there's nothing though.
Look, we're pretty organized around here, but there's this place that we call my husband's office, but it's our indoor shed. I think that would be, we don't have a shed outside, it's a room in the house, and I think, oh, that's the one that needs the most love.
Yeah, wow. So it doubles as a study and a shed then,
No,
really.
no, he doesn't, it's not actually an office, but we just joke. Because I have an office at home, and we call the indoor shed my husband's office.
His office. And has it got shelving and things like that for it?
It does
Or
have
it's just
shelving, but it's
okay.
shelving's it's that's sort of the macro. We need micro help. We need
Okay.
the drawers and the
Yeah.
shelves within the shelves, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
we need the
So that even
containers.
just gives me a hint that you're probably more of a micro organizer than the big macro,
Yeah, I think
having everything
that's
together.
the difference is
Yeah,
that's he has organized that and not me.
yeah, yeah. So, so you talked about then minimalist. How did you become a minimalist then?
Yeah, well, it
What's the
wasn't
story?
intentional. It was definitely accidental. I would have described myself anything but a minimalist up to 15 years ago. I was living in Europe at the time and I loved to go shopping and spend money on absolutely anything that I could. I earned pretty all right, but at the end of the month, I was always broke because I just kept buying stuff I didn't need and spending it on things that I didn't need. And then my husband and I made the plan to travel overland from Europe to Australia and then to go and settle back home in Australia. And we looked around our apartment and we looked at our bank accounts and we thought our house is so overflowing and our bank accounts are bare. So something has to change in order for us to be able to do this because we're talking about pre Instagram influencer era. People were not making money traveling, it was a budget activity. And so we got really clear on what the goal was. Okay, we want to be able to stop work for a year. We want to be able to immigrate. And what do we need to do that? Well, we need X amount of money. And, we're going backpacking, but we're not coming back. So we can only take what fits in our bags. And anything that doesn't help either of those things, we're not doing. So we left our big fancy apartment. We stopped eating out. We stopped buying things. I started selling things. And it was like this visceral, emotional experience for me to have to part with my things and realize that it was, obviously there's some sort of hole that you keep filling if you keep trying to buy things. And as we went through that process, I started to realize how freeing it was and how light life felt having less things to think about, less things to clean, less things to take care of. And I started to actually embrace this lifestyle. So even we did the trip, we ended up saving enough for 2 years. And when we finally
Wow.
got to Australia and we got a house, we decided to continue living that minimalist lifestyle. And we moved back to Europe a year later, but still that minimalist lifestyle has followed us all the way.
And how do you go then? How did you go then with the transition with kids, with a
Yeah,
child though?
everyone
That's
said
hard.
when I was pregnant, they said, you can't be a minimalist with a child.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, well, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And actually, our daughter doesn't know life differently. There's certain kind of practices that we have in life. Like, okay, well, if you want to have the new stuffed animal, we're going to have to get rid of another one. Or if you want to bring more clothes into the cupboard, we're going to have to get rid of some clothes. We have a max capacity rule, and when you can have whatever you want within there, and it works. And I think the thing is also, it's about how you approach things, right? So
yeah, definitely.
when we are going to purchase something, we don't just buy things on a whim. If we see something we like, we say, okay, well, let's think about it. And if we still like it in a week, we'll come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great way.
Yeah, for sure. And then even when we immigrated together from Europe to Bali, we all had one suitcase. Again, brought our lives down to one suitcase. Even our daughter, she was 3 at the time. And everyone thought, oh, no, that's not possible. You can't do that. But yeah, she's embraced it as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I'm sure because she's been part of that from a young age, it may continue on, into her adult life as well.
Who knows? Who knows?
You never know, though.
It might be the pendulum swing that goes the other way.
It could be, yes.
Yeah,
especially if you go
after
back
her
to
deprived
Australia, I'm
childhood.
sure. Yeah, exactly. So then how did it shift with your work then as well?
Yeah, so I actually was working for someone else. I had a salaried job in the past. So it wasn't really until my daughter was born and I wanted to create my own business because I didn't want to have to work when someone else dictated. And I was trying to figure out how I could take the experience that I had, which is working in the operations department of big corporations, big multinational businesses, also smaller businesses, but both. How can I take that and do that for myself? How can I be an office manager without an office? And I came across the idea of being a virtual assistant. And I thought, oh, I can do admin. I can check off to-do lists, no problem. And so I started that business and very quickly realized it was a horrible business model for me because I kept working myself out of the job. Clients would hire me.
You'd set up the system.
Clients would hire me and say, I'll need you for 10 hours a week. And then, after a month or so, they said, oh, I don't actually need you anymore. And the problem was that I kept minimizing their businesses. People would come to me and say, oh, my plate is full and I'm overwhelmed, so I just want to throw some tasks onto your plate. And I'd start asking them awkward questions like, well, why do you want this task to get done? And what are you trying to achieve? And why haven't you automated this? And we could create a system for that. And so slowly I just kept working myself out of the job with every client that I was working with. And then luckily I had this one lovely client and she said to me, Saskia, you're not here to tick off to-do lists. You're here to Marie Kondo people's businesses.
That's great. I love that.
At the time, Marie Kondo was huge. And it was an approach that I had never thought about. I was subconsciously bringing minimalism into people's businesses because I was working with clients who were coaches or consultants or had agencies, and they had all of these goals that they were trying to achieve. And I was standing next to them going, why are you trying to achieve 6 different goals at the same time? You're only taking one step ahead in each of them. What if you just focused on one and went all in on that? And then we made sure that everything else was systemized and simplified. And I didn't realize that isn't how most people's brains necessarily work.
Yes, no, they don't.
Yeah, and it's the same within our own lives. Yeah. We've all grown up in this world where more is more. And, there's the career path or the life path. You graduate, you get the job, you buy the house, you get the bigger house, you get the bigger car, and you just keep more because that's the path that's laid out in front of you. And it's the same with business. But what if we stopped and asked ourselves, is that the path that makes me happy? Is it, getting the better label on my door at work with the role that everyone thinks is amazing? Or is it having the fancy car in the driveway or the big house? Or is it something completely different? Maybe I want to live out in the forest with a tiny little wooden cabin and, to tend to my chickens. Maybe that's what's going to make you happy. It's not what everyone else told you would make you happy.
Yeah.
And I find it's the same with business, that we'll hear business coaches or internet gurus and they say, this is what you should be doing and you need to have this goal and you need to have this thing that you're working towards and you have to specialize in this and create more offers and do this. And before you know it, people have just added all of these things to their to-do list that aren't actually aligned with what it is that's important to them.
Yeah. And then they've got too many things, isn't it? Which they don't actually really need to manage as well.
Yeah, exactly. And everything that you start creating, every goal that you're working towards, every offer that you have, every client you work with, it's effort to keep it up. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So do you find then, like, obviously it's different to, how is it similar to the physical stuff? Like, your drawers and your cupboards. And then when you apply this sort of thinking to, say, a business.
I think it has so many parallels. Obviously, in your work as well, Narelle, you would notice that it's not just about the stuff. It's all the feelings around the stuff, right? Whether it's the awkward feeling of not wanting to open the drawer, or it's the feeling that I described earlier that I got joy, I thought, from buying things. It's not actually about the things, it's about the feelings around them. And I think that that's definitely similar in work. And it's the same also with, everyone's got the famous drunk drawer at home in businesses as well. I mean, whether that's your Google Drive that you just keep shoving things in and hoping that you never have to find again, or whether it's a task list where you keep dumping things, or the what do you call it? The desktop on your computer.
Yes, on your computer. Yes.
That when you start it up, it's like this instant, oh my goodness, look at all of this mess, right? Yeah. There's a lot of similarities that you can draw between the two.
And then I suppose the other one that comes to mind that I seem to come across with clients I've worked with is that they're like deleting photos or deleting things because otherwise they've got to pay for more storage as well. Yes. I'm sure something that you come across as well.
Yeah. So while I don't specifically help people with their Google Drive photos or their Google Photos, it is an honestly, if I'm being like really truthful, I'm not amazing with my photos. I have to say, minimalism does not exist with my memories in my photos. But yeah, for sure. It's
just though that looking at it and going, okay, do we need all of this, or what's a system that can, help me to organize it and simplify it, or even delete some of it, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I think it was James Clear who said really aptly, your goals will fall to the level of your systems, right? You can have the plan of achieving something, but if you don't actually have the system in place to make it a reality, it's going to be a battle uphill constantly.
Yeah. So what's one of the systems that you see that business owners, like founders in particular, might skip and not have in place to be organized?
Well, I think people always have systems. I think the question is whether or not it's consciously or subconsciously created, right? Like if we look at something to relate to your personal life, how you brush your teeth, how you start your morning routine, you can consciously create a morning routine that serves you, or you can subconsciously just roll out of bed and, have no planning come into it. And it's probably not serving you. And it's the same in business. The number one system that I work with my clients on is looking at their customer journey. And that is the entire process of someone who's never met you, never heard of your name. How do they discover that you exist? How do they engage with you? What's the sales process like with them? What's the delivery process like? And how do you offboard them? And what do you do when you've finished working together? So that from that start to finish, first meeting to saying goodbye, what is that process? And most people that come to me have subconsciously created that process through trial and error over the years. It's all in their head. And not to say that the steps aren't working, but the quality of the customer journey depends on their mood. And that's a really big problem that people can run into, is that if you don't have a system in place, you're not going to be able to give people the same consistent level of service. Because maybe you'll have one client that joins you when you're feeling amazing and you're in a good mood, and they're going to get all the emails and all the attention, and you've had a good night's sleep, so you're not going to forget to send them the contract or the welcome kit or whatever the thing is. But then you might have another client who joins when you've had a shitty week and you forget things and your emails don't sound as nice, and you've got two people who paid for the exact same service and they're not getting the same one. By going through that customer journey and mapping out what are each of those steps, and then figuring out, can we create a template? Can we set up an automation? Can we have a checklist? Can we create something that's going to take the weight off you to remember and to manually do them? And not to say that we're going to completely remove the heart out of your business. You dictate how those things happen. But setting up those systems and processes so that you don't have to do everything from scratch each time, right?
Yeah.
Like just this week, I started working with a new client, and they're an amazing business and they're super successful. And every step of the process, they said, okay, we have to send this email, we have to do this email. I said, have you got a template? No. Have you got a template? No. Have you got a template? No. So every time some poor person
do it again.
is typing the same email, and obviously a template email, it's not the same as an automated email, right? A template email is one that you can still change. You can add a personalization. You can adjust to each person. But by having 80 or 90% of the email written, it saves you time, but it also saves you brain power. You don't have to remember all the things, right?
Yeah.
And if the whole thing is in your head, you're mentally carrying it. See, it is taking up so much headspace. So anyway, as we go through this process, we're figuring out the emails that they can write, the templates, the checklists, what have you, and we're also looking at what we could automate. So the tool that I specialize with is called ClickUp, not ClickOne.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, did I say click one? Click up.
That's okay, ClickUp. That's a task and project management tool. So maybe if people haven't heard of that one, they've heard of Asana or Trello or Monday.com. In my opinion, ClickUp is the best, but everyone has their own way of looking at things. So then we'd be looking at that customer journey together to say, okay, well, maybe we can set up an automation in the system that when a new client submits a form, that then we can ensure they're getting an automated email that says, thanks for the form, we'll get back to you shortly. Maybe we're going to generate a task list of things that have to happen. Maybe we're going to notify someone in the team that they have to do X, Y, Z. All of these things could be automated that you don't manually then have to go and do. So it's going to make sure that it's saving you that time, that headspace, and the customer is going to have a much better experience because they're not getting forgotten.
I'm a huge believer in systems, and I love that. It has changed the business. And so do you find, though, for people, because obviously it's going to change from someone who's just one solo person and then someone who has, say, a small team of 2 or 3 people. Do you have a number where you find you need the systems, need to change, or you need to actually develop the systems?
From day one.
And from day one.
Day one. Even when you're by yourself. I consciously choose to work by myself, bar a few freelancers that I sometimes hire in.
Yeah.
But that's a conscious choice. Everything in my business is systemized because I'm not going to waste time on things that past me could have taken care of that future me would have to pay for now. Right? So it's from anyone. Because even if you're working by yourself, like the templated emails we talked about, that's such a simple fix, even if it's just you. And again, even if it's just you and you've got that system that's saying, okay, we've mapped out the process. We've sent them this. Now we're going to give them the booking link. Now we're going to prepare XYZ. It just takes out that having to start from scratch every time and reinvent the wheel and make sure that everyone's getting that same experience. Yeah. But obviously, as the business grows, you want to be able to outsource things. And if everything's in your head, no one knows how to do it. And something that as a virtual assistant I experience, but also in the work that I do now, we make the assumption that everyone's brain works the same as ours. Spoiler alert, they do not. Because if I was to say to you, I don't know, for example, like draw a red car, the car that you drew is not going to be exactly the same red car that I'm going to draw. Maybe you're thinking of a 4-door. Maybe I'm thinking of a 2-door sports car. Completely different. But we make the assumption that everyone thinks the same as us. So if we tell someone to respond to the emails in the inbox, they're going to reply in a completely different tone of voice. And if we tell them to create social media on our behalf, it's going to be completely different unless they have a clear, specific process to follow. This is how I talk. I do say these words. I don't say those words. Or these are the brand colors. We always use this font. We always make sure that we do X, Y, Z. And, very often people are growing with their business and they want to outsource. And they say, but it's just so hard because I spent so much time on this person and so much money, and it ended up costing me more time because I had to redo the work or it wasn't good enough. And look, there's 2 sides to this coin. One, yes, no one is you. No one's going to do it exactly like you do. But second, you can get it as close as possible, but only if you have the systems and processes and training in place. Because these people can't absorb by osmosis.
Exactly.
Right? They're not exactly you. But if they have a foolproof process that they can follow, if there are templates that they can use, and if they've been trained that they can understand what it is that you're trying to achieve, then they're going to get an 80-90% version of what you could do by yourself. Maybe even better if they're specialized in a field that you're not specialized in. because we all have this idea that we're the only one that can do anything when it comes to our own business.
Yeah, definitely. So what about transferring, say, a part of a system into your own household and relating it to digital? Is there any in particular that you can think of that you've used with your own family?
Sure. So I think there are so many systems in our everyday life. And again, like, do we consciously or subconsciously create them? The one that for me is one of my biggest pet hates is it's 5:30 and there's no dinner plan. I can't stand it. And it's almost unreasonable, but it stresses me out like nobody's business. So we have a weekly meeting that we have with the family each week and on Sunday, and we talk about, okay, so what went well this week? What didn't? We have like a Scrum retro together. It's really funny. What went well? What didn't? And what did we learn? And then we look at the calendar. Okay, so this week we've got such and such's birthdays coming up. All right, we need to buy a gift. We've got some other commitment, so I won't be home that night. Are you going to be at home? Yep, okay. And what does everyone want to eat this week, right? So we plan that out and we decide on Sunday, this is what we're going to eat. And honestly, most weeks, it's the same thing. I used to think that this would be one of the most horrible ways to live, but we basically eat the same thing every week. Variations of, but we make the decision up front. And it's also, we've taught our daughter that we say, okay, this is what we're eating this week. This is your one chance to share your opinions about it. Because after this, we've agreed. Nothing's changing. So, I don't feel like that. Like, what? Yeah, you had a chance to talk about it on Sunday.
Yeah.
And so, we have a plan that we follow. And then from that, we create our grocery list. My husband does the grocery shopping. And we have all the food in the house to make all the meals. No one has to decide anything. It's all been planned. And you could choose if you wanted to do this in a digital way. We choose to do it analog in a book. But that's definitely a way you could do it.
Yes, no, we've only just changed to digital in the last 12 months just because of the calendar that we're using. But yeah, it makes such a difference. And especially as kids get older, like our daughter 17 has a job and works sometimes at nighttime now. It's like, if the meal isn't ready, isn't thought about, she doesn't finish work till 10. It's like too late to eat dinner. So we've had to get really organized lately about what days she's working to make sure that there's either the dinner's early or it's something that we've already cooked. So it definitely makes a big difference. Otherwise, she'd probably miss out. She'd have toasted sandwiches every night that she finishes work otherwise.
Yeah, I can imagine. This is a 17-year-old's dream.
Exactly. Saskia, what is the best place then for people to connect with you?
Sure. So everywhere it's the same name, Saskia Mardi, which is a difficult one. So I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes.
Oh, definitely.
But you can find me on LinkedIn for the most part and on Instagram. And I've also got a podcast of my own called The Business Minimalist.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time and for also sharing all that information in regards to digital organization, which is so useful.
Yeah, but thanks again, Narelle, for having me. It was really fun to have a chat, and I loved our little chat that we had before we got on, but also that we had on the episode. It was really nice.
Thank you.